Welcome back everyone. Hi, if you're new, my name is Tori and today I have a book haul to share with you. A lot of these books I've actually been holding on to for a couple of months now. The oldest book on this list I think is from like early November, and then the most recent one is actually from a couple of days ago. I keep the most recent books for a while before I film a book haul just because I don't film book hauls too often to begin with, although there might be another one coming pretty soon because my birthday is in early February and I already know I'm gonna buy some books and treat myself. So these right here, this is just a stack of science fiction and fantasy books, and there's also some thrillers thrown in here as well, and I also have one nonfiction book that I'm really looking forward to sharing with you guys. But before we get into the video, just happy new year, welcome to 2021, and I'm truly wishing you guys nothing but happiness and peace and health for the new year, and I'm just so thankful that you're here. Let me stop rambling, let's get into the books and let's get into the video. So first I'm going to get started with the only nonfiction book on this list, and that is A Promised Land, and this is by someone you've never heard of before, but no, this is by President Obama, and I got this for Christmas, so thank you so much, Mom, if you're somehow watching this. This was a beautiful Christmas present, and I was just so excited to open this up. This is the first volume of President Obama's presidential memoirs, and I've already read the preface, and I love it already because I was reading it in his voice and it was just making me so happy. But this, I'm thinking, is dealing with a lot of the behind the scenes of his presidency, going into a lot of the decisions that were made during his administration. But even already from the preface, what I've gathered is that there's this really strong tone of hope. I probably won't dive into this tome of a nonfiction novel until sometime later in the year, but overall I'm just so happy that I finally have this. I've heard nothing but great things about it already and expected nothing less. The next book I have is one that I'm currently reading, and that's Ring Shout by P. Djeli Clark, and I am just falling in love with P. Djeli Clark's writing, his storytelling style, his characters. Just, it is so good. So I really started falling in love with his writing last year when I picked up The Haunting of Tramcar 015, and then towards the end of the year when I read A Dead Gin in Cairo. So this is my third work by P. Djeli Clark, and this is a novella, and this is just, it's wild. It is absolutely wild, and I didn't know I needed something like this. It takes place in the early 1900s, and we have our main character Maurice along with her group of friends, and they're clan hunters. But there are these monsters, these kind of demon-like creatures that actually inhabit the bodies of clan members, and they're called Ku Kluxes, if I remember. Yes, the monsters are actually called Ku Kluxes, and Maurice, she can actually see the Ku Kluxes, and she like has these swords that she goes out and like starts killing these creatures with. It is just, it is so good. The attention to characters and their dialogue and just everything. I'm loving this book so much right now. So this next one that I have here is a sci-fi novel, and it was one that was kind of on my radar last year but just never got around to picking it up, and that's Docile, and this is by K.M. Szpara. This sounds nuts. That says, the blurb on it is, there is no consent under capitalism. And so it sounds like we have this dystopian world where these characters who, if they're suffering with like crippling debt, they can actually sell their bodies, sell themselves to someone else, and that person controls their contract pretty much. And it sounds like in order to get through these really traumatizing and just dehumanizing sexual acts with the people who control their contracts, these characters, they take this drug that makes them docile, that helps them get through it. That is really all I know about this story. It just sounds absolutely wild. The next book I have here is The Silence of Bones, and this is by June Her, and this is a historical criminal story. Actually, someone put this book in my comments when I forgot what video it was, but you know, I always ask you guys what you're reading and what you're loving recently, and so someone said they really loved The Silence of Bones and that I should check it out. And whenever someone says that, I always put it on my like mental radar TBR. Then I saw Angela from Read Extra. She's a newer booktuber. Definitely have to go check her out. I will leave her a link to her channel in the description box below. One of her videos was recommended to me, and I clicked on that, and I loved the entire video. I love her content. She just, the way she speaks about books and what she's reading, it's amazing. And so in one of her videos, she mentioned this book, and I was like, oh wait, I think that's the book that was recommended to me. I read the description again, and then I just went and purchased it. But we're following our main character in Korea, and they're an indentured servant to the police department, to the government, to the police bureau. And when someone royal is killed, then our main character is kind of forced into the investigation by just pure accident pretty much. For people who have read this, it seems like they really enjoy it, so I'm excited to see where I kind of land on this spectrum. The next book that I have here is The First Sister, and this is by Linden A. Lewis, and this is a space opera drama. We're following about 3 different characters, one of whom is on Earth, and then we have another on Venus, and they are all just trying to survive as best they can. But when it sounds like the military, they are trying to get control of Ceres, and when that starts happening, allegiances are beginning to be tested, and these 3 characters are going to have to come together and really find out where they stand and basically how to change their life pretty much. So it sounds really dramatic and really intense. The next book I have here is a thriller, and that is The Chain, and this is by Adrian McKinty, and this sounds so good. So I had a stack of books that I got from Barnes & Noble, and I was fine, ready to check out, and then the bookseller, oh, she was so sweet. The bookseller, she was just so excited to talk to somebody about this book that she had just read. And I mean, she was going on and on and on about how much she loved this book, and just like the smile on her face and the passion in her voice, I was like, well, I think I want to love this book too. But this, I mean, it sounds so good. I just had such a great conversation with her. This mother, she drops off her kid at the bus stop. I guess the kid is on their way to school, but then when she drops the kid off at the bus stop, she gets a phone call that the child has been kidnapped. Oh my God. And the only way that she can get her child back is to kidnap another child. I actually have not looked up any reviews for this, because when someone recommends me something, I just want to go into it and just experience it. And I can't wait. The bookseller just completely, she did her job. She sold it to me. So she really sold me on this book. So I cannot wait to read this. The next book I have here is Brown Girl in the Ring, and this is by Nalo Hopkinson. And this is, it sounds like a post-apocalyptic novel. And we have this community where the rich flee and just kind of leave everybody in the inner community just to fend for themselves. But then resources start getting scarce. The society begins to crumble, and it sounds like the inner city has to basically relearn the old ways of surviving. But we have this young woman, this main character, who is living in the society, and pretty soon, in order to survive, she has to just seek out these ancient truths and open herself up to the history of her family, the past of her family, especially her mother and her grandmother. So that's all I know about this. I know Njeri from Onyx Pages loves Nalo Hopkinson, and I've seen her rave about Hopkinson's work for a while now, so I cannot wait to finally dive into Hopkinson's work for myself. The next one I have here is The Empire's Ghost, and this is an adult fantasy novel, and I'm laughing because I'm not joking, I have read the synopsis for this at least 4 times, and I still don't quite understand it enough to kind of take it all in, summarize it, and reiterate what it's about. It's too much going on in here. But from what I have gathered, this is seriously like the first couple of sentences. From what I've gathered, there is this empire that's fallen. It's broken into different kingdoms now because magic is gone, and we have this emperor who is trying to do whatever they can to regain control and build up the empire again. That's it. That's the best I can summarize this. This next one I'm also excited for. That's Fledgling, and this is by Octavia E. Butler. I'm telling you, she can do no wrong. I am slowly making my way through her work and just loving every second of it, everything I pick up. This is going to be, actually, I'm going to read Parable of the Talents before I pick this up, but I'm happy I have this. So this is Fledgling, and we are following this girl. Well, actually, she's like in her early 50s, but she has the body of a girl, and she's actually a vampire. So our main character, she's moving through this post-apocalyptic world where people are trying to end, you know, her kind pretty much. So I can't wait to get to this. Again though, I have to read Parable of the Talents, which is the second Earthseed book, before I get to this, but I'm very happy that I have this. I know everybody says this, every booktuber says, I'm so excited for this. No, I'm very excited for this book though. That is Legendborn by Tracy, Deon. So I did not hear about this book until the Goodreads Choice Awards came out. I was just kind of messing around in the different tabs, like, oh, let me see what's in nonfiction, even though I haven't read anything nonfiction. But I was just kind of browsing through, and then I got to YA. Recognized 2 books, but this one, Legendborn, caught my eye because of this cover, and I read the description and immediately I was like, I think I'm gonna really love this book. And then once the book was finally on my radar, then I was seeing it everywhere. It's the strangest thing. We are following our main character, 16-year-old Bree Matthews, and even though she's in high school, it sounds like she has this program that she's doing at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And while she's in this program, she witnesses this magical attack on campus. And it turns out this character named Merlin, he tries to make Bree forget what she saw or what happened, but then that leads to her finding out that there is this group of students that call themselves Legendborn, and they like hunt down these monsters that Bree saw. And pretty soon she starts finding out some, you know, some revelations about her mother's death, and just the things are not what they seem. The next book that I have here is The Complete Pesepolis, and this is by Marjane Satrapi, and this is Satrapi's memoir in graphic novel form. I vaguely know about the Pesepolis books. I feel like I saw them years and years ago, but just never really knew, never really understood what they were about. This is Satrapi's memoir and her going through growing up in Iran during the Islamic Revolution and really what that meant for her, how that changed her life and her family's life. And it sounds like Satrapi is going to be taking us through the political upheaval that was happening when she was young, and just really what it means for her now and how it's affected her life into adulthood. I'm not even sure like what compelled me to pick this up after all these years, because this was on display in my local Barnes & Noble, and I kind of walked past it and I was like, that looks familiar, but again, never knew what it was about. So when I read the description, I was really surprised by what it entails and what I'm in for. So the next book I have here is one that I'm actually really looking forward to, and that is The Assassin's Blade, and this is by Sarah J. Maas, and this is a collection of Throne of Glass novellas that are prequels to the first Throne of Glass book. I am currently on book 4, which is Queen of Shadows. I just recently finished Heir of Fire, which was the first book I read. Like, we're so far into 21, right? It was the first book I read this year, and I finished it like January 2nd, and that book is so good. Like, I wish I were kidding. I'm not. The series is progressively getting better. I want to do a whole video about this series. The series is progressively getting 1,000 times better, because Throne of Glass was not good, and then Crown of Midnight was fine. Anyways, so this collection of short stories, this was published after Heir of Fire, so I'm gonna read it. I probably actually will read it at the end of the series, but this, I think, is, since it was published after Heir of Fire, I think it's fine now if I read it now that I've read Heir of Fire. So this is just a collection of what our main character, Selena Sardathian, what she went through before she came to the king's castle in book 1, and just really what happened after her traumatic backstory happened. Oh my god. And then the next book that I have here is one that I've already read, but I wanted it in physical form, so I did invest in this, and that is Mordacious by Sarah Lyons Fleming, and this is the first book in the City series. As I mentioned before, these are post-apocalyptic novels, zombie novels, but it's so much more than that. You just have to read them. So this is the second series after the Until the End of the World series. I had such a great time with these characters, the connections that came up to the first trilogy, so I'm really happy to just finally own this now. But yeah, I recommend these. I still need to read book 3, which is Instauration, I think it's called, but the second book, Peripateia, was also really good, but I probably will wait a while until I get that in physical form. The next book that I have here is Lovely War, and this is by Julie Berry, and I actually don't remember how this book got on my radar, but once it did, this is a book that I just kept seeing everywhere. And then it wasn't until Ashley at Bookish Realm mentioned this book and just how much she enjoyed it that I was like, okay. So I ended up getting this, and this is a historical fiction novel. It takes place during, it sounds like World War I and World War II. We're following a handful of different characters, and it's a multi-layered romance, but the cool thing about the story is that it's told from the perspective of the goddess Aphrodite. I'm not sure if she's like interfering in their lives during the war, or if she's just recounting what's actually happening to the gods. I used to read so much historical fiction years ago and just kind of fell off, but I love curling up with a good historical fiction novel, so we'll see how this one goes, but I'm really looking forward to this. And then finally, I'll talk about these two at the same time since they came from the same place, and those are my book of the month picks for January. The first book that I have here is The Survivors by Jane Harper. I knew that. I don't know why I paused. And then the next book that I have here is These Violent Delights, and this is by Chloe Gong. So this was the one that I actually picked for the month, and then this is the one that I added on because I accidentally skipped the month that this was offered before I really knew what the book was about and that I would be interested in it. So The Survivors, but says that this man's life is forever changed on the day a reckless mistake leads to devastating consequences. That could be anything that I've ever read before, but no, I'm kidding. But it also sounds like this body has washed up on the beach. We have this family with a lot of just buried secrets that start coming to light. This will be like my first time physically reading Jane Harper. I tried to get through her book The Dry last year, and I did not even count it as a book that I read in 2020 because I listened to it as an audiobook and I had no clue at all what was going on. I had to keep restarting chapters, keep rewinding different parts. I couldn't tell you what happened in that book, so I left it just unmarked. I'll try it again, but probably in physical form. The last one that I have here is These Violent Delights. This is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, and normally I don't like retellings. I mean, to a certain extent, everything is a retelling of something else, a story inspired by something else. But if something is like specifically marketed as a retelling or like a fairy tale retelling, I'm kind of iffy about it. But the setting is what really captured me. This takes place in 1920s in Shanghai. And you know the story of Romeo and Juliet, but it takes place in Shanghai, and yeah, it just sounds like we have these warring families, these politics, and I'm just really looking forward to seeing Chloe Gong's take on it. So this sounds good. We'll see how it goes, but I'm happy I finally have this. So that's it for me, you guys. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Again, welcome to the new year. I'm excited for just to see how the reading year goes this time. I'm excited to see what I pick up, some tomes, some old reads that have been on my TBR for a while. I can't wait to see what you guys are reading throughout the year. Thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.